You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast brought to you by the 90 Min Football Network. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou, and I'm delighted to be joined on this edition by a very special guest. He's one of the most recognized YouTubers when it comes to the Arsenal world. Welcome to the program, Mr. Deluded Gooner. How are you, sir?
I appreciate that, man. I mean, I don't know what to say after an intro like that, man. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate your kind words. Appreciate you for inviting me on. Appreciate you for being on my channel last time as well. So, yeah, man, I'm happy to talk with you because obviously we always talk Arsenal and it's always a good chat. And I'm sure there's a bag of things to speak about since I was last to your channel. So, yeah, man, keen to get into it.
Looking forward.
You're on mute, bro.
Yeah, here we go. My mic, for some reason, I've got this adapter that I plug my mic into, and every now and again it seems to drop off as if my mic's not plugged in. It drives me mad. I keep saying I'm going to sort it, and I never do. So it's my bad, really. But let's get into it. International break feels a little bit dead at the moment. And, you know, as a fellow content creator, I'm sure you're kind of feeling it a little bit as well. You're kind of waking up in the morning and you're looking for stuff to talk about, and you're trying to kind of find that balance between talking about stuff that you feel is interesting and also not getting sucked into stories that you know are probably nonsense. And it's tough, isn't it? Really tough time for us. I wanted to start off by getting your thoughts, first of all, on what happened at Brighton at the weekend. We've had a couple of days now, few days, in fact, to process that performance. It wasn't a very good performance. I think we can all agree on that. Arsenal certainly weren't at the races. But I have tried to look at this really positively because for me, it's 10 points from the last 12 available, which signifies some improvement, signifies some progress. I think it's a realistic return in terms of what we could expect this team to produce, given how up and down we've been over the last 18 months or so. Looking back on the Brighton game, are you frustrated? Are you disappointed? Are you content with the return overall? And are you, I guess, or is it what you expected, I guess, is the question I want to ask.
I mean, you kind of touched on it there, and everything you said in relation to all the emotions. I feel a bit of everything. I feel typically where Arsenal's concerned, you can't. It's very rarely black or white, and I think that Brighton game isn't. Now, of course, I think there was elements where we were second best. We weren't at the races, as you said. We weren't winning our first and second balls. We were just completely dominated. There is that, but on the other hand, I do think we need to rein it in a bit. As you said, 10 points from a potential 12 is good from where Arsenal were. I think it was a bit of a reality check, I would say, for Arsenal fans, because we're not going to win every game. We're not perfect. We still have a young and very naive side, and not everyone's going to be at it every day. I think it got to show in that game that, while I like the stability that Arteta's introduced, playing the 4-2-3-1 or slight variations of it, there potentially could be games where we might have to tweak the formation or personnel, and we're still not quite there yet. So I do think, in a couple of seasons that's gone by, we lose a game like that, considering we played a very informed side. We could have done a lot better. We should have done a lot better. But as Sir Alex Ferguson used to say, if you can't win, don't lose. And we didn't lose against an informed side that are extremely more street smart than us. And that was the one vibe that, for me, I couldn't get out of when we're looking at Brighton. It's like, for ability, very few of them Brighton players probably match up with us, but they've been around the block. If they haven't been playing in the top division, they've dealt with promotions and whatnot. And our boys are young and naive. We can talk about the young captains we've got in our team or leadership qualities, but there's a lot that they don't know. And actually Arteta. So as you said, man, 10 points from a potential 12, I'll take it. But yeah, I think we could have applied ourselves a bit better. I do think the formation didn't really help us, and yeah, man, we saw a lack of street smartness, but I'll take it. There's still a building block, really.
Yeah, and I guess the biggest encouragement was the defensive performance, wasn't it? In the sense of how resolute we looked in that particular area of the pitch, and that's something you couldn't say of Arsenal teams in years gone by. When you look at, Mikel Arteta's tenure overall, I think the overriding positive would be that he's made us a better defensive unit, and now he's got a totally new back line that it fits into his vision. And I think that, you can take encouragement from the fact that he's got that right, and now maybe further down the line, you're going to hope that he gets it just as right in other areas of the pitch so we can move forward. But I guess for me, the other thing I wanted to kind of pick your brains on before we move on to chat about a couple of today's stories is, as fans, do we sometimes, are we guilty of completely dismissing how good sometimes our opponents were? Because football is one of those sports where, obviously you're going to focus on your team. Obviously you expect your team to perform to a certain level. But sometimes I feel like as fans, we have an inability to just say they were better than us. On the day they were better than us. And that can happen, can't it?
I mean, you said it there, and that's what I was alluding to about two truths can live in the same realm. In that, listen, we can dissect the game, say we could have, would have, should have, would have, could have done better, but they were better than us. And there's a lot of times where there's going to be a golfing class, or teams are going to be better than us. As you know, as Arsenal fans, as frustrated Arsenal fans for a number of years, there's never going to be that patience, that looking at things from another perspective. But 100%, sometimes you just have to hold your hands up, whether the team is winning the Premier League or they've been promoted, and saying they were the better men, because that's the funny thing about football. And definitely in the Premier League, anyone can beat anyone. I wouldn't directly correlate that necessarily to the Brighton game, as good as they were, but in general, 100%, Harry.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Let's come on to talk about some of today's stories. Of course, it's the international break, as we mentioned earlier on, and it does feel like a lot of the stories that are coming out now do need to be taken with a pinch of salt, but they are worth discussing. And I wanted to start off with a report regarding William Saliba, who, of course, is currently on loan at Marseille. A lot was made about how he was treated at Arsenal, the fact that he wasn't registered last season, and that this season he was deemed surplus to requirements or not part of the plans and moved on to Marseille. Georges Sampaoli, the Marseille manager, had been quoted as saying he wasn't sure about Saliba, that he was someone that, he liked, but felt that he probably could have got someone a little bit more experienced in. And when I was listening to that, I was thinking, well, if the manager who is signing him is unsure, then it's not so outrageous that Mikel Arteta is unsure about him. But he is doing well. He is performing. And Fabrizio Romano came out yesterday and said that a discussion has taken place between Saliba and Arsenal in the last few weeks, where they've assured him he is part of the plans next season, that they trust him 100%, I think is the quote he used. This could turn out, despite all the criticism that Arsenal faced, to be a very good loan move for William Saliba, couldn't it? If he does come back
100%.
and slots back into the squad. Are you excited still to see what he can bring to Arsenal when eventually he does return?
Of course, I'm excited, Harry, because obviously I think in hindsight, where if the club were going to do what they were going to do with Saliba, they shouldn't have, when he signed, there was a big circus around. He's on the private jet. They showed him in the Arsenal kit as a little kid, described as potentially being a centre half for a decade by Raul Sanllehi. So I don't think them things helped, because obviously potential is a buzzword in football. Obviously, when someone's described by some people in France as the Mbappe of centre halves, you're going to say, hold on, why can't you play for Arsenal? I do think, again, much like anything with Arsenal, I think it's not white and black. I feel what Arsenal are guilty of is, as a fan, there's never been really a lack of, it looks like there's been a lack of clarity over how we're developing him. And we're just, you see him for half a season just wasting away. When we find out little things like we wanted him to go on loan to an English club, he wanted Marseille, then that helps us. But I think that's what Arsenal are guilty of. I think fans need to keep some perspective. I'm sure you're watching Saliba as much as you can, as I am. There's been some quality games for him since he's been away from the club. And there's also been a couple of clangers in his last two games, and the man's 20. You've seen it. Everybody was billing Saka and Smith Rowe to be the next this, that, and the other. The minute the form looked a bit shaky, the 10 and 7 were given to them too quickly. So I do think that fans need to calm it down. I think they need to keep perspective. I do think fans just need to watch him. There's a lot of qualities, and I'm not going to lie, in general, when we've done some of the partnerships or played some of our more experienced players that make the same mistakes, I haven't always understood why Saliba can't play, really. But he's still naive, extremely naive. He's going to learn a lot of lessons. He's going to be 20, 21 when he returns. So, of course, I'm excited, but fans need to keep perspective. For me, a more confident one with more games under his belt to go with a Ben White and Gabriel, that's fantastic. That's 110 million on centre-halves. That probably, with respect to Ben White, I don't know if you're going to make your 50 mil, but there is a resale value. The one thing I would say for me is just actually by watching Ben White, I do think he's ahead of Saliba, but I don't think he's quite as ahead as I thought he was in terms of his speed speed of thought, his footballing IQ and things. And every time I watch Ben White, I find myself looking back at Saliba and saying, okay, cool, the manager can say what he wants. And I'm not against him going out on loan, but it's like I look at Ben White and you're naive. So how naive could Saliba could be? You know, I don't really see justifying the 50 million price tag on Ben White. So I find myself asking how much is he not prepared to throw in Saliba currently? But I do understand it. You know, really, I don't think there's a simple answer for it. But yeah, man, your first question was I excited? Of course, I'm excited to see Saliba, man. Like, it's got potential, and we're a young squad with all of that. He's spoken of being a leader. I'm sure you see all the videos that come up. 100% excited, bro. 100%.
The thing is, as well, though, when we talk about, you know, like you mentioned, that Ben White can be a little bit naive in his play sometimes, and I completely agree with you. And I said it at the time when we signed him, while I was positive about it, and I was delighted that Arsenal were kind of making big moves in terms of going out and breaking the bank and bringing in players, more importantly, that would be part of the furniture for many, many years to come. I think for me, with the Saliba thing, the issue around him and maybe a lack of maturity at times, I'm not sure if it's to do with him as a footballer or him as a man, because I think that those are two very different things. And I think that Mikel Arteta is probably better placed than he's definitely better placed than any of us as fans and onlookers to be able to say that. You know, we haven't worked with him, we haven't trained with him, we haven't had conversations with him, and he can kind of paint this picture of himself on social media as the kind of victim of Mikel Arteta being extra fussy or extra particular about certain things. But I think sometimes as onlookers, we, just like when we have to take into consideration, as I was saying before, how good an opponent is, sometimes as onlookers, we have to understand that we don't see the bigger picture, don't you think?
Yeah, like you said there's a truth, you know, that's what fans fail to understand, that you can have your opinion, but there's a truth very different. And much like any footballing debate, very rarely can fans say that. And I find the way I look at Saliba is almost how I look at Guendouzi. I know Guendouzi's gone and I don't really want to speak about him, but it's almost like for every example of immaturity, less so Saliba, but for every example of immaturity, you see actual great examples of being mature, like the other week with Guendouzi. 1 minute he's fighting his teammates, then he's captaining them and he's being called up by France. And I do think there's a lot of growing up Saliba needs to do, probably on the field and off it, because there was a bit of social media antics. I don't want to read too much into it because it might be something of nothing, but I do think that, and I mean, we'd all be guilty. If I just consider another perspective, if I'm in my early 20s, I've been an Arsenal fan, I've completed a big move to Arsenal, I'm living in London now, everybody's blowing smoke up my bum as well, saying I'm this, that, and the third. I might drop off, I might be a bit complacent, I might be a bit naive. These are things that doesn't necessarily mean you have a bad attitude, it's just complacency. So I think you made a solid point with Arteta, because he does seem like a bit of a stickler for discipline and things like that. So probably there is some truth in that, really.
Yeah, there's got to be more to it than just footballing ability, especially when you watch, you know, Pablo Mari come into the side at times and look like a duck out of water. And you look at, you know, other players like, I don't know, you know, Rob Holding at times has been poor as well, or the decision to play Serie Kolasinac as a centre back and things like that. You do start to wonder then, is it just about ability or is there more to this? And there probably is. And just because we don't know there is, doesn't mean we can completely dismiss it. So exactly. I think you've always got to approach these subjects with a bit of caution, haven't you? We're talking a lot about the future, and we're talking about players that, you know, will hopefully come good and will be part of this team for many, many years to come. That requires patience, though. And it's a patience that I'm not sure this fan base in general has. Where are you in terms of your willingness to give Arsenal time? And if so, if you are willing to give them time, how long do you think it has to be, or how long can you afford to the club before we have to see significant results? And by that, I mean getting back in the Champions League, competing for the cups, etc., etc. What's your kind of timeline on all of this? Because it's very easy to say, I'll give him time, but there must be a cutoff for everybody.
I mean, to be honest with you, I'm going to sound a bit hypocritical, but I actually think there's no time. I think my cutoff point is gone. I think from last November, nobody's really got time, really, and everybody's on, you know, on thin ice. So I think I need to see stuff. I mean, typically they say 3 to 4 years, and looking at our team, they're gonna probably reach maturity, assuming everything happens. For me, my patience is, as I always say on my YouTube channel, better yet, Rome was built in a day, but I need to see scaffolding. If you're showing me scaffolding put up, builders are coming in and things, you can have all the patience because I'm seeing a process, I'm seeing a building created. It's if we now start to go left, and I'm asking, okay, Ramsdale's had a purple patch. When he goes through that negative patch, are we pulling him out? Or, you know, Tomiyasu against Brighton, we saw a bit of weaknesses. Are we going to polish them? It's if we start to do what we typically see, whether it's Frio, Oxlade, Chamberlain, many of these youngsters, where we're going in, season out. Certain players, 5 games, they're amazing. 5 games, they're trash. Other players, 1 minute, they're a centre mid, they're a winger. So I would say, I mean, a cycle, I'll give it 3/4 years, assuming all the variables are in place and Arteta improves everything. I mean, fans are never going to give patience, man, because again, they can say they're trusting the process, they're this, that, and the other. Every time Arsenal are not in Europe, for me, it is a failure, and we need to go back in. Obviously, as a fan, you know, you're meant to just look in-house, but we always look at what other clubs are doing and what things are doing. So I don't think there is ever patience in football. Like you see, you know, you need to buy patience. You get, you know, as you said, 10 points from 12. I won't say everybody's off your back and we're all united necessarily, but you've kind of got, quote unquote, some pressure off you. So I'd say for me, I'll give it 3. I'll give it Arsenal in general 3 years. Mikel Arteta, you need to show me something by the end of this season, whether that's, you know, a real system improving in terms of an attacking sense, just downright evolution, or just qualify for Europe. Because again, if there's no improvements, we finish 8th. What are we trying to do here? As much as you said, it's for tomorrow. Tomorrow, it's what we do today, especially with our experienced players. What we do with probably Partey, Aubameyang, etc. That sets up the Sakas and Smith Rowe's. That's why I get a bit more annoyed when last season, maybe not so much this, but last year, 1 minute Aubameyang's in, then he's out, then he's left, then he's right. The imbalance with Lacazette, you know, not really doing right by Partey. Again, persisting potentially with Granit Xhaka and whatnot. So I would say that, to be fair, man. But you buy time in it, really and truly.
Yeah, you only earn time if you keep chucking crumbs to those that are following you,
Exactly.
to keep them kind of appeased that while they're on this long road. Without that, it's a bit like, you know, you're kind of leading them down a blind path, and there's going to come a point where people are going to say, well, I'm not following anymore. And I agree with you. I think for the overall project at Arsenal, I think we have to accept that given the level of player turnover, the amount of players we had to get out and therefore bring people in, I think you have to look at a 3-4 year project. But I agree with you. When it comes to Mikel Arteta this season now, it is make or break. I gave him a lot more leeway than most last season because I felt like although it was his second season in charge, it was only his first full season, right? It was only the first season where he had the whole kind of season to get in what he wanted to do, to implement what he wanted to implement. But also he didn't get a proper preseason, and there were a lot of other factors that made it a lot more difficult. Now he's had the preseason. Now he's been backed in the transfer market. Whether you think it's enough or not is another matter, but he's been backed. And we're now in a place where he has to deliver. And I think anything other than getting Arsenal back into Europe this season is a major failure. And he probably should walk if he doesn't manage that. But I might sound like a bit of a snob here. I'm not talking about Europa Conference. I want to be in the Europa League at minimum. If we get in the Europa League and we were within a respectable distance of the Champions League places, I can take that and we can move forward with it. But that, you know, this is still Arsenal Football Club, and as much as you hit the nail on the head, it's all for tomorrow. But there's a minimum standard that needs to be upheld here. And if we were to finish 8th again, 7th, or somewhere around there, that doesn't really do it for me. I think top 6 is a must. I really do.
100%. Like when I look at what you said, it's like obviously when you look at the, you know, there's probably 4 clubs, United, Chelsea, Liverpool, City, write them off. So top 4 is probably unrealistic. But for me, I want to fight for it because as crap as Arsenal were, you had to try really hard not to get top 4 last season and the season before that, even on the Emirates season. So for me, I just want to see fight, man. I just want to see that you're running it all the way. I don't want to look in December and say we're out of Europe. As you said, I don't really want to say I want Europa League, but as you said, realistically, that is our Champions League now, and you need to get Europe. We're out of it. We're failing financially because of it. So facts, man. Conference League, I mean, if we're in it, we're in it. But I mean, if we're looking at that as a target, then we're really poor. But this is what I meant. This is what I mean when I asked you on my channel. It's like, what is Arsenal's goals internally then? Because as we look at it, you probably, unless a miracle happens, you know you're not getting top 4. It's a top 6. And those teams outside the teams I said, they're probably, you know, over a 38 game period, probably reckon they finish above us. So that's what I meant when I was trying to ask you. So then internally, if you know all of this, what is our real goals for this season with this squad that is 23 years of age on average? And again, you saw the naiveties in that Brighton game, let alone a 38 game period. So it really, you know, the more I get asked questions like that and you ask it to me, it's like, it's the direction of the club. I don't really know where we're going. And that's something I would really like answered beyond the slogans and the process and all these things.
And Arsenal fans also have to realize, like all football fans do, that the objectives that we as fans feel are appropriate and set for our football clubs don't always mirror those set by the football club themselves.
Fact.
And you have to accept that and understand that. And when you're sitting there going, well, we finished 8th, why hasn't he been sacked? Well, it makes you think that the objective set by the club was never much more ambitious than that, in which case the actual root of the problem is probably somewhere else and probably higher up the line than Mikel Arteta. I think for me as well, just to wrap up on that kind of what we can achieve this season, I do think the top 6 is realistic. I do think it's something that we could achieve if we can put together just a little bit more consistency in terms of our level of performance. That should translate into more consistency in terms of our results. I think in a lot of ways, obviously with the longer term aspiration, if we don't do it this season, being to get back in the Champions League, I think the Europa League is a tough competition to win, but I think it kind of represents an easier route still than doing it via the Premier League. When you look at the strength of those 4 clubs that we've mentioned and the fact that Arsenal have been to 2 semi-finals, have been to a final in the Europa League, we always show that we're there or thereabouts in that competition. And you just feel if we could get that little bit extra to get over the line, it could get us back into the Champions League. It could be that push forward and give us that boost that we so desperately need to then reestablish ourselves as regular top 4 contenders.
Right.
Just wanted to get your thoughts on another story that's come out over the last sort of 24 hours. It was a report from the Mirror. And again, as we said right at the start of the show, take all this stuff with a pinch of salt, especially when it's from the Mirror, especially when it's from the Sun, with all due respect to those guys. They're talking about Gabriel Martinelli. And the quote they use is anxious Arsenal star Gabriel Martinelli could force transfer exit over lack of playing time. Where are you on this whole Martinelli thing? Because last season, people were calling for him to start ahead of certain players, in particular, Willian. Mikel Arteta seemed really reluctant to do that. Gave him a little bit more game time at the back end of the campaign. But in the eyes of most, it still wasn't enough. Where are you on this Martinelli debate? And is it time for Martinelli to maybe start thinking about his future, if indeed he isn't part of the plans?
I mean, to be honest with you, you know, as you said, the Mirror's probably making a story out of nothing, or whoever it was. But I want Martinelli to be angry. You know, one thing I thought with a couple of Arsenal youngsters is that they're too comfortable. I mean, if this is a guy that Ronaldinho's talking about, Brazil allegedly looking at calling up once upon a time, you know, he was a bit of a quote unquote to a degree talisman when we were poor, when he got his looking under Emre. I would want to play football, really and truly. I would want to play. I want him to play. You know, he's a naive, to be honest, in a positive way, a naive teenager. He's seeing other teenagers and young men get opportunities. He's probably training well and things. I want him to be disheartened. I want him to be angry. I want him to chomp at the bit, really. And I know Arteta a few months ago kind of spoke about Arteta, and Martinelli kind of has to learn to deal with disappointment. I can't understand why he's not playing. On the William point, I think most people will agree those minutes could have went to seeing if Reece Nelson is good enough, throwing in Martinelli, or even, you know, with the main man Pepe. I think everyone can concede he got it wrong there. I think things that harm Martinelli is, I do think a bit like when Pepe weren't getting a look in. I don't think you can throw a man in, expect him to perform if he's not been in it for 4 weeks or so. But at the same time, I think fans do gas it up a lot. I look at Southampton in the FA Cup, Aston Villa in the FA Cup, apologies. Or was it Southampton last season? One of them. He came in. Yeah, he was quite poor. I look at West Bromwich Albion through the middle. He struggled physically. These are things I expect. I do think he needs to play more, without a doubt. Don't know what Arteta's on, but I do think fans gas it up a lot. Don't think he's always taking his chance. And I think one thing that goes against him is, I think Arteta said it before, on that left-hand side, he's not really indirectly convinced with Tierney and Martinelli. And obviously, Smith Rowe's emergence now. Odegaard can play out there. Bamyan's out there. You've got the true wingers that can play there in Saka and Pepe. These are things that go against him. I would want to play football if I'm him, really and truly. Why wouldn't you want to play football realistically? So again, that's what I want to hear. And if I'm him, if I'm Balogun, I'm asking the manager honestly what I need to do, but I'm keeping one eye open to what things can happen in January. Now, I know there's AFCON and a couple of attacking players might leave, and we don't know what's happening with Lacazette. January could be something. Opportunities can happen, but yeah, man, I do think he needs to play. But when your opportunity comes, take it is all I'd say, Martinelli, if it comes.
Yeah, that's exactly it for me. And I think when I look back at last season, I think there was a part of me that was sitting there going, I mean, I get it. Like, I get why you're reluctant to use him, but surely anything is better than what we're currently seeing. There were points last season where it was that bad, that drab, that dull, that you looked around and you went, surely Martinelli can give you something more, even if it's just a bit more energy, a bit more zip, a bit more intensity, etc., etc. But there was an interview that Martinelli gave to ESPN Brazil, I think, at the end of last season, in which he really went into kind of his injury recovery. And he talked a lot about how, it was agreed by him, by Mikel Arteta, by the medical team, that they were going to have to be very, very careful about how they managed his fitness over the course of the season to stop the risk of any, potential reoccurrence. Because to get a couple of ligament injuries in your knee at that age could be, it could kill your career. So there was a lot of caution
That's the
there.
fear, man.
That's it, exactly. There was a lot of caution there. And so having read that and having heard that almost straight out of the horse's mouth, I kind of said to myself, well, okay, I'll give Mikel Arteta and the way the club managed him, the benefit of the doubt based on last season. But I did think that this season he'd play a larger part. Now, it's still early, and I think that given the likelihood of injuries and all the other stuff that can come up over the course of the season, he will get opportunities. But the ones he has had this season, albeit few and far between, I'm not sure he's taken them. I'm not sure he's taken them with both hands. He's shown a lot of energy, a lot of aggression. I think back to the AFC Wimbledon game. I was at that game, and I remember the first. Yeah, he won the pen, and in the first half an hour, I was watching it and going, you know what? He looks the most lively. He looks the most likely. But it was a lot of buzz and a lot of energy, but not all that much coming off the back of it. So when you consider that Saka and Smith Rowe are obviously at a level above him, Nicola Pepe still contributes hugely in terms of goals and assists, looking back at last season in comparison to those two young lads I've mentioned. And then, like you said, the fact that sometimes he's looked to shoehorn Aubameyang in there to get Lacazette in the team as well. It is going to be difficult for Martinelli. And at this point in his career, when those opportunities come along, no matter who they're against and no matter how few and far between they are, they need to be taken with both hands. And I don't think he's done that necessarily of late. Remember as well that there is no Europa League for Arsenal this season, which was kind of a prime breeding ground, wasn't it, for people like Martinelli when he first broke through. That was where he caught our eye. League Cup, Europa League, and not being in the Europa League is a problem. And it's not just a problem for Martinelli, but it's a problem for whoever the second choice goalkeeper is, because that's 7-8 games in the season that he's now not playing. Yeah. So there's a lot of players that are going to struggle with this now. So I don't know. I still think he's got a lot of talent. I still think he's got a lot of ability, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do moving forward. But he needs to pick himself up a little bit as well in terms of his level. It can't just be Mikel Arteta is killing Gabriel Martinelli, because when the opportunities are coming, I'm not convinced that he's taken them with both hands.
And I mean, you're right on that, man. And like I said, yeah, he just has to take them. Smith Rowe didn't look at a point levels, and he went on loan and came back. I don't think Martinelli needs to go on loan, because I think he's got the mentality. I think he's with it. I look at Manchester City in I think it was the League Cup last season or the season before. In fact, it was last season because Runnison was here. I just look at the way before the game, how he's talking to his teammates. I look at that game against Chelsea. I think he's got a lot, man. He's got a lot to bring to the table. But as you said, you've got to take the chance. And to be honest with you, as a footballer, as much as I think I agree, I'm actually more on Martinelli's side. You've got to remember the manager's got to pick the best team in it. It's not your feelings, it's for the collective. So give your manager a headache, really. And sometimes you just have to know it's not my time. How many times have we seen footballers, not be involved for look at Smith Rowe. Again, he was for me in the same boat last season as Joe Willock and Eddie at a point in that you might need to leave permanently, you might need to go on loan. But he got his opportunity and took it. And in 10 months, look what he's doing. I do think people underestimate how inexperienced Martinelli is. I don't know how many appearances he made at Otano, but I can't imagine it was too many. And it kind of praised him more. But it's like, you've got to remember these things catch up. He's still learning. There's still a lot of IQ. I'd say the one thing that concerns me is the fact that we're doing this young player thing and he ain't really scratched the surface. But narratives can change. We could be on your channel in a month from now and saying what's going on with Martinelli, like we did under Pepe last season or towards the end. So yeah, man, I'm convinced in Martinelli. But if I was him, I mean, logically, you want to play football, you can't afford to waste a year. If something's not happening in January and your manager's moving sideways, you know what you need to do, really. So hopefully it doesn't get to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough job, isn't it, for Mikel Arteta as well, because there's almost this kind of, as a manager, I'm sure there will come points where you feel a responsibility to develop those players that you have working under you, but you also have the pressures that come with managing a top level football club to deliver results. And sometimes those two worlds will collide and you'll have to make a decision. And if you feel that Smith Rowe, Saka, Pepe are all better options in terms of getting you results today, then you need to do what's right for the team. So it's a really difficult position for the manager to be in. But I think Martinelli, going back to the point I was saying about him maybe not always taking those chances of late, he's actually making this a lot more comfortable for Mikel Arteta than it probably should be. And if he can,
great point.
If he can up his level when he does get those opportunities, then all of a sudden Mikel's got a problem. And then we can sit there as a fan base or as journalists or as onlookers and go, well, your team's not scoring goals. They're not delivering. They're not producing in the final third. Gabriel Martinelli, every time he gets an opportunity, he is grabbing it with both hands. He's giving you a headache, yet you refuse to pick him. Now the spotlight and the focus is on you. But right now, I don't think it's fair to say it is all on Mikel Arteta because Martinelli hasn't been at that level, I don't think, anyway. And I know there will be people that disagree with that. Just for the last few minutes or so, let's get some of your questions in the live chat box. Get your questions in for Deluded and we'll put them across to him. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, please do hit the like button on the video. It really, really helps on the YouTube algorithm. I hate asking for it. I hate saying it, but it is one of those things that really does help. So please do smash the like button. And if you're new, give us a subscribe. If you listen to us via the audio platforms, please do leave us a review as well. That really, really does help. Right, let's get some of your questions in from the chat box then. Let's see what we've got. Big hello to Nikomo, who says, wow, you, DG, and Harry together. How did I not know about this? Big up you two. Thank you very much, mate.
Appreciative.
And thank you for supporting the show. Of course, big hello to Christoph as well, one of our regular viewers. Here's one from Junior Gunner, who says, Martinelli's still very raw, has an unorthodox dribbling style that makes him very easy to defend against. Being direct and showing a lot of energy doesn't warrant a starting position. So it's more of a statement than a question, but I think that's quite a fair statement. Would you agree?
I think it's spot on, especially when you live in England or you're an English fan. I've always said it. I feel, don't get it twisted. I love Martinelli's energy, the pressing, it makes things happen. But sometimes it's over exuberance. It's just wasting energy. Sometimes it's ruining us tactically. Right now, Martinelli's probably just seen as a madness sort of player. Maybe like Pepe, like they can come on, they're a bit different. He is very raw. I look back at the game in the League Cup, I think, a couple of years ago against Liverpool. His over enthusiasm led to him conceding a penalty. No one says that. He's right. And I think in England, that running around for the sake of it, I'm not saying Martinelli does, it's praised. Where if you have people, they're probably not the best examples, where you got Martial who doesn't smile, or Ozil, it's seen as they don't care. Where you look at a lot of other European coaches, they'll laugh at you for just running around like a madman. It's silly, really and truly. So he is unorthodox. He needs to improve his first touch. He is very raw. He should be getting opportunities for me. But, people need to stop making out that Martinelli's a world-class player. Yet he's got the potential. I do believe in that. But we need to keep some perspective. And that goes for him. That goes for Saliba. That actually goes for Balogun. That goes for half of these players, if I'm honest with you. That's my biggest pet peeve in football these days is potential. Because a lot of these people, they don't really understand the word and realize the many many variables. If we want these players to be that tomorrow, there's several things they've got to do today. Now, I have no doubt about Martinelli. He strikes me as someone that's very focused, very driven. You know, he's got a strong mentality. He's bounced back from his injury, had a couple of those. You know, he's dealing with being on the bench he ain't throwing his toys out the pram. So yeah, he's right, man. You know, showing energy doesn't warrant a starting position. At times it can, because it's very easy to get behind that, especially when Arsenal, you go back a few years ago or even a few months ago, we was crying for that. But yeah, man, the statement's facts.
Yeah, and you know, without going too far down the rabbit hole now, I'm glad you said that as well, because that's a theory that I've always had as well. You know, this is the one country where the footballing outlook is very, very different.
It's
You know,
mad, bro.
someone goes smashing into a big challenge that will often generate a bigger roar from the crowd than a wonderful bit of skill. It's just a different way of looking at it. And you're right, Martinelli is a bit of a chaos player. And if you're a manager who's very big on systems and shape, which most modern coaches are nowadays, then there comes a point where those players and their kind of erratic way of playing the game can, you know, sometimes put you in jeopardy in that sense. And I think reading between the lines, that point about Martinelli being a bit chaotic probably ties into what Mikel Arteta had said previously, which you brought up earlier on, around him and Kieran Tierney not necessarily working well. Because if he's so unpredictable, then it can cause you problems going the other way as well. So yeah, interesting stuff. Let's see what else we've got. Mr. George says, whose place does Martinelli take in the team? For me at the moment, nobody's, and that's why he's not in the team. But I've got this theory, Deluded, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it just quickly. I think that when you look at Martinelli's skill set, I would prefer to play him as a centre forward than as a left winger. Do you agree with that? Because the player himself doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. He doesn't feel that way. I think I agree with Mikel Arteta. He's kind of said he should be able to play across those front three, and I think he should be able to excel on the right. I remember when he was getting more game time, he was playing on the right, weren't really playing well, and people were saying it's because he's on the right. You know, you still need to be able to affect the game. I think he's probably most comfortable on that left, and I do think he could have a career there. But I just see a bit of Luis Suarez, Alexis Sanchez through the middle with him. I just think he needs to improve a bit physically, offer something with his back to goal, or when he's playing a physical, two physical centre halves, changing his game a bit. So yeah, 100%. I think the man's a number 9 in the future. In relation to whose place he takes, as you said, he doesn't take anyone's place really and truly at this moment in time. Personally, I mean, if it's off the Brighton game, you'd probably move Smith Rowe inside and Odegaard comes off and he plays left wing, but he just got to play the waiting game. I don't think he takes a single spot, really. I don't think, you know, if Aubameyang's getting dropped right now, I'm probably leaning towards Lacazette. If anything's to happen on that left wing, probably going to lead towards Pepe, probably getting an opportunity there just before him. But yeah, man, that's how I'd answer. That's a great question from Mr. George, man. Bloody hell.
Yeah, it is a good question. And just finally on that kind of Martinelli through the middle piece, I think one of the things we really saw from him when he first emerged onto the scene was this really unexpected ability in the air, which is something that we don't have in the centre forward position. And it feels like at a time like this where we're constantly crying out for someone to get across the near post, to win a header in the center of the penalty box, he could be part of that solution. And especially with Lacazette's situation, if I were him, I'd be looking at it and going, I'm going to show you that I can do that role. Because with Laka going, with Nketiah going, with Balogun, there's still being question marks about how ready he is for this level. There's an opportunity there. There really, really is. Really is.
There's a spot there. Like you said, I mean, clearly the club are looking for a striker because you saw the Martinez rumours and stuff. But like you said, you go and complicate things. You're an option through that middle. You're an option off that left. You know, you become a linchpin again. You're 100% correct, bro. 100%.
Absolutely. Let's take one more question before we wrap it up, and we'll just take one quickly. Hold on. Let's see what we got. Raj Richard says, can we send both Martinelli and Balogun on loan if Nketiah and Laka stay post-January? Do you think they both need loans, Martinelli and Balogun?
I mean, I wouldn't say that I think Balogun needs a loan. I just think with Martinelli, if he's not going to play football, he needs to go and get it somewhere else because, again, there's no substitute for minutes. You know, minutes are currency in this day and age, you know, and I think Balogun should have been on loan last season. Obviously, his contract situation messed things up. So I think Balogun needs it because he ain't been exposed. What he's had Brentford, a couple of Dundalk games. I personally, with respect to Dundalk, I discount that because I think our 23s probably give them a game. So he needs to go on loan. Martinelli's is a bit different. In relation to sending them both on loan, I'm not sure I'd keep Martinelli. I think for me, Balogun, unless a miracle happens, Balogun's someone that's one of the first out the door in a temporary one in January. I think Martinelli stays with me because I just remembered you've got the AFCON, you've got Aubameyang potentially, you've got Pepe leaving. He can cover both those roles. With Balogun, obviously the same could be said. But yeah, man, you'd still have Lacazette. So I'd be prepared to stay with that, really. But that is an interesting theory. But for me, it wouldn't really convince me because, again, you're loaning out two players that are the future, whether I agree with it or not. And then you've got two players that, you know, are running down their deals. And even if they do sign new deals at this point, we're all going to look around and say, what's going on now there? You know, with Eddie, we could turn around and say maybe there's a resale one. With Lacazette, we're saying what's going on there. So again, I don't even know, bro. But yeah, man, probably is a possibility.
Yep. Great stuff. Deluded, thank you so much, mate, for joining me. And look, as I said right at the top of the show, Deluded is one of the most recognizable Arsenal YouTubers out there. He works incredibly hard. Every time I log onto YouTube, there is a live stream going on. So I take my hat off to you. How can people find your channel? They can click in the link in the title of this video. I've put it there so they can click on it and go straight there. But just tell people a little bit about what you do, how they can find you, and what you got coming up.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So basically, yeah, I mean, you know, DG, Deluded Gooner and whatnot. Like you said, you can click it on the YouTube video and subscribe to me. Like Harry, can't stop waffling about Arsenal, talking about Arsenal and whatnot. And yeah, in relation to shows, I didn't do a show this morning. I probably will do one on YouTube at 11. Well, I might said 11. We're gone. I typically do them at 11:30. Probably do one in the afternoon. We'll be on Twitch later as well. Doing a watch along in relation to the Nations League. So yeah, man, just Deluded Gooner 04 on everything, really, man. Love for having me, H.
No, thank you for coming on, mate. And we'll definitely have a chat about doing some stuff more regularly as well. It's been great fun. It's been a great chat. We'll be back very, very soon with more Arsenal-related content. We'll be back later on today, continuing our player review series. We're going to be talking about what Aaron Ramsdale has brought to Arsenal on this afternoon's show. So make sure your notifications are turned on. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We'll be back very soon with more. Until next time, ciao.
Come on.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.